It is strongly advised to consult a physician before engaging in any physical activity.
Welcome to the science of speed. In this program, we're going to explore human speed. Running speed is the single most important characteristic there is for sports performance. No other physical performance factor enhances athletic ability for virtually all sports across the board more than running speed. The ability to get to the desired location before your opponent is a huge advantage. To arrive first almost always ensures victory. We're going to break speed down into two basic parts: straightaway speed, that is, sprinting full speed in a straight line, and side-to-side quickness, the kind of jackrabbit agility that enables you to bust a move.
This is where we differentiate between fast speed and quick speed. A fast athlete is good in a straight line sprint. A quick athlete is better at starting speed, quick bursts of speed, and changing direction. A fast athlete will win a 100-yard race, whereas a quick athlete will win a 5 or 10-yard race. A fast athlete is great at running straight ahead. Point him in a straight line and he does great. A quick athlete is like a jackrabbit, explosive acceleration and great change of direction ability. Because of their tremendous starting speed, stopping ability, and change of direction ability, quick athletes are great at making moves and faking out their opponents. There is another kind of speed, by the way, and that is long-distance speed, the kind a marathon runner has. This kind of speed relies on maximizing the efficiency of your slow-twitch muscle fibers and sustaining a moderate pace over a long period of time. The top marathon runners run around a 5-minute mile for over 26 miles. They're incredible athletes at what they do. However, this is the exact opposite of what the Science of Speed program is about. The Science of Speed has nothing to do with endurance. It's all about explosive bursts of speed in a short distance. This program is all about being a drag racer. We don't care about gas mileage.
Long distance running can be hard on your joints. The constant repetitive trauma that occurs in your joints can damage the cartilage. Coupled to an inadequate rest and recovery cycle is a setup for injury. This may even lead to long-term problems such as arthritis. Therefore, as an orthopedic surgeon, I recommend against long-distance running when it comes to cardiovascular fitness. If you want to work endurance, we suggest using the Stairmaster or speed walking. For optimal cardiovascular health, sustain a heart rate of 65% of your maximum for 30 to 45 minutes, 3 or 4 times a week.
In this program, we will not deal at all with endurance and long-distance speed, and instead, we will be focusing entirely on sprinting speed and quick bursts of speed. First, let's talk about sprinting full speed ahead, like a fast runner.
There are 2 basic ways to increase straightaway speed. Increase stride frequency, that is, move your feet faster and take more steps per unit of time, and increase stride length, that is, cover more ground per step, or, preferably, a combination of both. The science of speed will maximize both of these things. First, let's talk about increasing stride frequency.
Increasing stride frequency means to increase the amount of strides you take in a given amount of time. It simply means to move your feet faster. Increase the number of strides you take per unit of time, and obviously you'll run faster.
There are a couple ways to accomplish this. One of them is to pump your arms faster.
As most runners know, as you move your arms faster, your legs move faster. That's because both your arms and your legs are linked together in your nervous system. With the mechanics of running, your arm speed and your leg speed are simultaneous.
So let's examine the mechanics of the arm swing. The purpose of the arm swing is to transfer counter-thrust force to the legs. To do this, you need an adequate range of motion and the correct pathway of movement. The front hand needs to come up to head height, and the rear hand needs to clear a point behind the hip. Don't sacrifice range of motion for more speed. There is a strong tendency to cut the range of motion short with your arms. Avoid this. An adequate range of motion is necessary in order to generate maximum torque in the opposite thrust vectors of your strides. Make sure your front hand comes up to head height. Drive hard with your elbows. Your rear elbow has to drive up hard in order to counterbalance your legs' forward thrust. Make sure your rear hand clears a point behind your hips.
Also, be sure your arms travel straight forward and straight back in a direct line with your shoulder. Don't cross your arms in front of you like this on your arm swing. Any side-to-side movement dramatically reduces forward momentum. Also, opt to have a knife edge on your hands versus a closed fist. That way you can slice through the air.
The idea is to pump your arms as hard and as fast as possible while still maintaining an adequate range of motion. Another way to increase stride frequency is to increase the efficiency of the movements of your strides. When you increase stride efficiency, you will increase stride frequency. To increase stride efficiency, you should have your feet travel around and around in a circular pattern. If you look at a sprint from the side view, your feet should travel forward and back in a circular, oval-shaped pattern, and not go out, stop, reverse direction, and come back. This creates fast motion that keeps generating continuous inertia. Your feet keep flowing round and around in a circular pattern rather than traveling forward, stopping, reversing direction, and traveling back the other way. This is much more efficient and a whole lot faster. This circular movement creates uninterrupted speed and momentum that keeps building and building as you burn down the track. You want to reach your front knee up high. Then extend your lead foot out from the knee to reach out in front of you, then have it travel in a circular motion down to the ground, and then thrust it backwards upon ground contact. Upon ground contact, the foot then becomes part of the rear thrust leg and thrusts hard backwards until coming up off of the ground, from where it travels in an oval-shaped circular motion up and forward again to become the front leg. The back and forth motion the feet travel when running is an oval-shaped circle that flows smoothly round and around, building speed and momentum. This creates very efficient running strides. The third way to increase stride frequency is to minimize your foot contact time. Pretend the ground is red-hot lava and run with your feet spending as little time on the ground as possible.
Your foot speed is inversely proportional to the length of time your feet spend on the ground. In other words, the longer your feet spend on the ground, the slower you are going.
Think about it. The slowest you can possibly be going is standing still, with both feet in contact with the ground, in which case you have zero speed. Both feet do not leave the ground, and therefore you go nowhere. When you transition into walking, you take one foot off of the ground and place it in front of you. So the definition of walking is that one of your feet spends time off of the ground during your strides. The difference between running and walking is that at least one of your feet is always in contact with the ground during walking. When you transition from walking to running, both of your feet leave the ground and you become airborne during your strides. The Olympics has an event called race walking. In a race walking event, you have to have at least 1 foot on the ground at all times during the race. If, at any point, both of your feet are off of the ground, you are no longer walking. You are now running and would be disqualified. Foot contact with the ground distinguishes walking from running. In Olympic speed walking events, the rule that distinguishes walking from running is that at least one of your feet has to be in contact with the ground at all times for the athlete to avoid disqualification. When you jog, your feet begin to spend less time on the ground. When you begin to run is when both of your feet are off of the ground during the transition between strides. And the faster you run, the less time your feet spend on the ground and the more time your feet spend in the air. So, to run at maximum speed, you want to have your feet spend minimum time on the ground.
To maximize running speed, we want to spend minimum time on the ground. Just like we want to spend minimum time on the ground when we do our plyometric jumps. When we do this, we exploit what's known as the meiotic stretch reflex. The meiotic stretch reflex is designed to protect skeletal muscle from being overstretched. When the skeletal muscle, such as our quadricep, is stretched, it produces a reflex arc. The reflex arc causes the muscle to fire with maximum intensity and speed. We exploit this reflex to help you become a faster sprinting athlete.
The definition of running is that both of your feet are off of the ground during the transition phase of your strides, and the faster you run, the more time you spend in the air and the less time you spend on the ground. So, to maximize running speed, you need to minimize foot contact time. And the fourth way to increase stride frequency is to train your body to move faster than its maximum speed.
But how can we make ourselves move faster than our maximum speed? Well, the answer is overspeed training.
Overspeed training means going faster than you are capable of moving through the use of assistance. This assistance can be achieved either by running on a slight downhill grade or by using an overspeed training device. There are a couple different kinds of overspeed training devices, one that uses a partner's assistance and the single user's version that uses a giant elastic. We will be using the single person overspeed training device, which is shown here. This brings up an interesting point. Many speed training programs are based on using resistance while running. Parachutes, running uphill, soft sand running, dragging a tow weight, etc. This means you go slower than your maximum speed while training with the theory that when you rid yourself of the resistance, you will go faster. Unfortunately, in practical application, this theory doesn't work very well because by training at a speed slower than your maximum speed, you condition your nervous system into going slower and not faster, which is obviously not what you want.
In the Science of Speed program, we have a completely different approach. We're going to use overspeed to train your body to go faster than its maximum speed, and therefore condition your nervous system into making you go faster.
So instead of using resistance to condition your nervous system to go slower, we will use assistance to condition your nervous system to go faster. That way you trick your nervous system into making your body move faster than it normally can, and through forced adaptation, you make it adapt to becoming faster. It's not strength, but rather it's how the nervous system controls your movements that mainly contributes to your speed. Overspeed training works both the frequency of strides by increasing foot speed and the length of strides. You see, overspeed training lengthens your strides and makes them faster. One of the goals of overspeed training is to create minimum foot contact time. Remember, to maximize speed, you need to minimize foot contact time. Summary. To increase stride frequency, you want to pump your arms faster, improve stride efficiency, minimize foot contact time, and apply overspeed training to exceed your maximum running speed. The second way to increase speed is to increase stride length. If you increase the distance you cover on each stride, you'll go faster. So many young athletes make the critical mistake of running with short, lazy strides. By not covering sufficient ground on each stride, they end up going really slow even though their arms and legs are pumping at full speed. So to maximize speed, we must maximize the length of our strides. There's a few ways to accomplish this. First and foremost is to increase the power in the thrust of your strides.
To increase your stride length, you need to improve the power and thrust of your stride. As you know from the Science of Jumping program, optimal plyometric training is by far the best way to improve your power.
The power that propels you forward in your running strides is created by opposing thrust vectors. Thrust meaning the force you apply, and vector meaning the direction that force is traveling. So, to maximize the power of your running strides, you must execute maximum thrust force directly behind you to propel your body forward. You see, running strides are composed of opposite direction thrusts. As your lead arm thrusts forward, it counterbalances your rear leg thrusting backwards. And as your rear arm thrusts backwards, it counterbalances your lead leg thrusting forward, which propels you down the runway. The power in your running stride is the result of the opposing forces moving away from each other to create forward momentum. The torso and hip twist is the juncture between these opposing forces. To maximize your stride power and therefore the distance of your stride, you want these opposing forces traveling in the exact opposite direction of each other with maximum power.
You see, one of the most important technique factors in straightaway sprinting is the direction of travel of your arms and legs. As we stated in the arm swing segment, you want your arms and legs to travel straight forward and straight back. Any side-to-side movement dramatically reduces forward thrust and power.
When sprinting, you want to have all of your drive force pushing and thrusting straight behind you and all of your momentum traveling straight forward. This creates optimal thrust vectors. You want to have your rear arm and rear leg pushing off in the exact opposite direction you wish to travel. Your arms and legs need to work together to counterbalance each other and maximize rearward thrust and forward momentum. Just like in jumping, the hips generate the majority of power and thrust in running. Where the leg connects into the body is where the majority of thrust is generated in your running strides. That's why devices that target and isolate the calves are really missing the boat. Running is not in your calves. Running is in the hips. The hamstring and glute tie-in is where the majority of propulsion is generated in each running stride, just like in jumping. Well, actually, running is just a series of well-coordinated, alternating leg, single-legged jumps. Sprinting and jumping are very similar in that they both require explosive power and the hips are the primary mover. And, just like in jumping, running is a whole body activity, requiring all of your major muscle groups, including your hips, torso, arms, and legs. But even more important is how your whole body works in unison. Your upper body and torso are just as important as your legs are in running. The next way to increase stride length is to improve your front knee lift. If your front knee doesn't come up high enough, your stride length will get cut short. Many young athletes make this critical mistake and end up with short strides that result in slow running speed, even though their arms and legs are pumping at full speed.
Front knee lift is very important in sprinting speed. That's why the iliopsoas group, or the hip flexors, are so well developed in world-class sprinters.
You need to drive your lead leg up and throw your forward knee up high and hard. Attack the air in front of you with your lead knee. Your front knee should come up to where your thigh is parallel with the ground on your strides. The third way to increase stride length is to increase your flexibility, and the best way to increase your flexibility is with the Science of Stretching program. The Science of Stretching will help lengthen your strides by maximizing your range of motion. Increasing your flexibility with PNF stretching will create long, powerful strides and will dramatically reduce the chance of hamstring injuries. Summary. To increase the length of your strides, you need to increase the thrust power of your strides by using optimal plyometric exercises and employing optimal thrust vectors to your strides. Improve your front knee lift to ensure proper stride extension. And increase your level of flexibility. Now let's put all of the elements of your stride together into a sprint. Sprint races have three basic phases: the start, the acceleration phase, and the momentum phase. In the start, you explode out of the hole and begin to sprint. Then you hit the acceleration phase of the sprint. In the acceleration phase, your goal is to increase as much speed as you can in the shortest amount of time that you can. That is, you want to reach maximum speed as quickly as possible. Then you hit the momentum phase of the sprint. In the momentum phase of the sprint, you've attained maximum speed and now you want to execute maximum forward momentum with minimum drag.
So far we've discussed running speed, but we haven't touched base on where it all begins: the start. So let's examine the components of the start.
If you're using sprinting blocks, you should start in a 4-point stance with both hands in contact with the ground. The 4-point stance allows a little more forward lean by having another hand that you can place the weight onto and brace yourself against the blocks for a more explosive start. Do 1 or 2 explosive vertical jumps in order to facilitate an explosive pathway in your neuromuscular system before getting into the blocks. Plant the heels of your feet firmly against the blocks with the balls of your feet braced into the ground. Lean forward and support your weight evenly throughout your fingers and your feet. Snug your hands right up to the line and then turn them out to have your thumbs and index fingers as close to the line as possible. Then raise your hips up when the starting official gives the pre-start signal. Try to think calmly and listen for the start. Try to be calm yet excited at the same time. Don't be tense. Stay loose. Don't try to guess the start. You'll end up either false starting or starting way too late. Instead, clear your mind and focus on the sound the starting gun will make. Make that sound the switch to a nuclear bomb. The exact moment you hear it, explode forward with maximum thrust. Thrust away from the starting blocks as far as you can. Literally jump away from them. In the start, you always want to think of the ground as a platform to push off of and not merely as a surface to move across. Explode off of that platform with maximum thrust. Push off of the ground as hard and as fast as you can. If you are sprinting without the use of starting blocks, use a 3-point stance with one hand in contact with the ground. In the 3-point starting stance, snug your thumb and index finger up as close as possible to the starting line. Then place your opposite foot about 6 to 8 inches behind the starting line. Place your rear arm up high at a point higher than your hips. Be sure not to put the same hand and foot forward. Remember, we want opposite thrust vectors occurring. So, if your left hand is down, then your right foot is forward. And if your right hand is down, then your left foot is forward. Next, place your rear foot's toe even with the front foot's heel, so it's toe to heel. Have your feet real narrow, about shoulder width. The spacing between your feet in a sprinting stance is the exact opposite from that of the classic three-point football stance. In a sprinting stance, you want to have your legs narrow. This sacrifices sideways stability in exchange for maximum rearward propulsion.
You see, with the exception of a wide receiver, a football player would not want to have a narrow sprinting stance because it provides absolutely no sideways stability. You see, a football player would want to have a wide, sturdy stance, so you can't push them over.
But to maximize the effectiveness of your start, you want to have a narrow stance because you want to have maximum rearward thrust projection directly behind you. Incidentally, plyometric explosive power training will dramatically improve your start. Explode out of the start and throw your arms forward and your rear knee high. Literally jump out away from the start using the ground as a platform to thrust off of. After you explode out of the blocks in the start, you hit the acceleration phase. In the acceleration phase, your goal is to increase speed as rapidly as possible. You've attained some speed and forward momentum from the starting phase, and now you must add to that speed as quickly as possible. In the acceleration phase, pumping your arms hard is critical. Really hammer your arms as hard and as fast as you can. In the acceleration phase, you're after maximum power. This is where the optimal thrust vectors we spoke of earlier really come into play. You want to power down the runway and get to the momentum phase as quickly as possible. At the final stage of your sprint, you hit the momentum phase. In the momentum phase, you've reached full speed and now you kick in the afterburners. Even though we say you've reached full speed, actually, you should still be slightly increasing speed throughout the whole sprint. It's just that the percentage increase in the momentum phase is nowhere near that of the acceleration phase. The momentum phase is characterized by maximum stride length and minimum foot contact time. Now you're floating across the ground with forward momentum and you glide through the air, kind of hydroplaning across the ground like a speedboat skimming across the water. You're like a human gazelle, and with quick and light pecs off of the ground, you should feel like there's no gravity. After attaining maximum speed, keep building momentum to where you are continuously falling forward and, with quick pecs of your feet off of the ground, you skim across the ground and fly down the straightaway. Your feet spend minimum time on the ground and each stride is a powerful thrust.
Now let's take a look at a very popular measure of human sprinting speed, the 40-yard dash. The 40-yard dash is a human drag race. It requires no endurance and is all about powerful strides and an explosive, well-timed start.
In the 40-yard dash, the first 10 yards are the most important. The 40 is all about the start. Opt to run the 40 on a track rather than on grass if you can. The track is a better surface with better traction and spring and should yield a better time. The 40-yard dash has no momentum phase. You should be accelerating the whole way through the race, gaining speed all the way through the finish line. Now let's take a look at Julian Gooden's incredible 4.3 second 40.
Go!
Sprint summary. Using the principles to maximize stride frequency and stride length, you should explode out of the start, gain massive speed in the acceleration phase, then turn on the afterburners in the momentum phase to fly down the runway. This will maximize your sprinting speed. Next, we'll talk about quickness.
Even though a great deal of emphasis is placed on your 40-yard dash time and your overall sprinting speed, an even more important component of athletic speed is your quickness. Starting speed, stopping ability, and change of direction ability are what determine your quickness. How much quickness you have is what determines how effectively you can bust a move.
A move is a fake you put on your opponent in order to obtain better position, usually to advance and score. A move requires balance, skill, agility, change of direction ability, stopping ability, and starting speed. But even more important than all of that, a move requires that you fool your opponent. You have to sell the fake to your opponent. You have to convince your opponent that you are committed to the direction of the fake move. A move is much more than simply the physical mechanics. It's also the psychology of fooling your opponent. A fake is only effective if your opponent believes it. Let's start by examining the mechanics of making a move. In tight quarters, with your opponents close by, a quick move, in any direction, must start with a move called the step drag. In a step drag, you move the foot closest to the direction you're going to travel first, then drag your other foot up to close the space. To advance forward, step forward with your front foot, then drag your rear foot up to close the gap. To retreat, simply reverse the procedure, moving your rear foot first, then dragging your front foot in behind it. To move laterally, that is, side to side, follow the same principle of moving the foot closest to the direction of travel first, then drag the other foot in behind it to close the space. So to side step to the right, you move your right foot over, then drag the left foot in to close the space. To side step to the left, move your left foot first, then drag your right foot in to close the space. So no matter what direction, forward, back, left side, right side, you use the same principle of stepping with the foot closest to the direction you are going first, then slide the other foot up. Step drags are used by the defense in basketball. When we say drag, we actually mean hydroplane across the ground, just skimming it, not raking it along the ground, causing loss of speed. So just skim along the ground with the bottom of your foot and don't literally drag your foot, which would slow it down considerably. The next move mechanic involves cutting. You see, most of the time, a move requires that you change direction. So let's take a look at changing direction. Changing direction requires leverage, balance, and the use of optimal thrust vectors. When changing direction, plant your outside foot and lean your upper body into the turn. To make a good, sharp cut, you need to cheat your outside foot out to give you enough leverage to thrust in the opposite direction. To do this, you need to drop your center of gravity as you enter the cut. You see, when you move your leg out away from your center line, your foot elevates off of the ground. So, to maintain foot contact with the ground, you need to lower yourself down and drop your center of gravity. This provides you with the proper leverage and traction to execute the cut. One big problem athletes have with sharp cutting moves is slipping out. To avoid this, plant on the inside edge or blade of your foot. Dig it in like a razor blade and lean most of your weight onto that part of your foot. Even if the foot rolls flat, you'll have maximum surface contact for traction and grip. Also, don't enter the turn full speed or you'll blow right by it. The sharper the turn, the more you have to slow down when entering it. Slow down into the turn with quick, hard, short, choppy steps while lowering your center of gravity. Lean in toward the cut. Good footwork depends on the position of your center of gravity. Have your center of gravity low and leaning to the inside as you plant your outside foot and burst into quick, choppy steps the other way, transitioning into a full-speed sprint. Another very important characteristic of foot speed and the ability to bust a move is stopping ability. Being able to put on the brakes is essential in your ability to bust a move and break your opponent's ankles. It also accounts for the technique used in the drop back and pop basketball move. The player makes a full commitment to drive to the hoop, then stops, hops back, and pops the jumper. To execute your stop, Begin by slowing down with quick, hard, choppy steps. Turn sideways into the stop so you have better leverage. Also, drop your hips down and lean back away from the direction you are traveling. Also, busting a move almost always involves making a forward threat. Your goal in busting a move is to advance forward, around your opponent toward a goal. When we say forward threat, we don't mean only straight forward. Most likely it will be at some sort of an angle, but it should present a threat toward superior position. If you don't make a forward threat, you don't force your opponent to have to react, and therefore you haven't made a fake. Many jitterbug type of athletes fall victim to this by shaking and moving in the same spot and making a bunch of fakes that have no forward threat. This doesn't force their opponent to react to any advancing threat, and they end up just making a million moves while still remaining in the same spot. This does little to fake your opponent out and gives the defense time to close in and trap you. Given this fact, most moves require that you get around your opponent either by angling to the left or angling to the right at a 45-degree angle. This is not always the case, but it's very common. With this method, you dodge your opponent while at the same time advancing toward superior position. You fake one way, then cut at a 45-degree angle the other way to advance forward. To make a move, first relax your body and be ready to go in any direction that's available. The more options you can threaten your opponent with, the better chance you have at faking them out. Keep your body loose, ready to go in any direction. Have your mind open to any option that is available. Be sure to be able to change your mind at any time. At the split second your opponent reacts, burst into a quick sidestep and immediately into a full speed sprint the other way. Now let's take a look at the 4 phases of a move. First, there's the fake you do to get your opponent off balance and leaning the wrong way. Then you make a quick sidestep or step drag. This is the immediate in-tight move you make to sidestep your opponent. Then you hit the acceleration phase. This is when you've got a little breathing room and now you need to create speed to increase the distance between you and your opponent. This is the same acceleration phase as the one we discussed earlier in sprinting. Knee drive and arm swing are critical in the acceleration phase. And finally, you burst into a full sprint. This is when you've opened a wide gap between you and your opponent and you burst into a full sprint and turn on the afterburners. This is the momentum phase of sprinting we discussed earlier. Overspeed training really helps this phase. Stride length, minimum foot contact time, and stride efficiency are very important in the full sprint phase. Note, many times you never get to the full sprint stage as you encounter yet another defender and have to do a series of quick moves. Sometimes there's not enough room to burst into a full sprint. Now let's take a look at some very effective fakes that you can start practicing to implement right away. One nifty move is called the overhead scoop move. In the overhead scoop move, you scoop the ball up and over your opponent's head off of the dribble when you take your 2 steps driving to the hoop. Dribble the ball out in front of you in a position that looks vulnerable to a steal and advance toward your opponent. The defenseman is trained to go after the ball, so when your opponent goes for the steal, quickly scoop the ball from down low to up high and loop it over his head at the same time you take your 2 steps toward the hoop. It works like a charm. Try this move next time you play and see how effective it is. If you bait the ball a little and time your scoop right, you'll really clown your opponent and blow by them for an easy score. Our next fake is the no-look pass. One of the best ways to sell a fake is to use your eyes. It's natural for people to look in the direction that they're going. Where you look is naturally where your attention is. The defense's job is to read you. Where your eyes and your attention are focused is logically where they think you're going to go. In the no-look pass, really sell the fake with a wide-eyed, exaggerated facial expression. You have to be convincing. Look hard in the fake direction. Again, if your opponent doesn't believe you, it's not going to work. After you turn your head and give a wide-eyed look in one direction, release the pass in the opposite direction. The effectiveness of the no-look pass lies in the accuracy of the pass and how convincing your misdirection look is. Next, we have the step around move. The step around move uses a quick head fake followed by a quick sideways step drag to get to the side of your opponent, then immediately turns into a full speed sprint to blow by them. The key to the step around move is a big, deep step drag. The more distance you can cover on your step drag, the better. The whole idea is to create space between you and your opponent. Give a convincing head and shoulder fake in the opposite direction and do a big step drag to the side. Be sure to lower your center of gravity as you execute your step drag. The step around move allows you to quickly maneuver around your opponent to advance toward your goal. Another very effective move is the spin move. The spin move is used to create a misdirection illusion with your opponent as you change direction on them. It's also good for football players to bounce off of tackles. To do a spin move, advance forward and then begin to cut to one side. Take a crossover jab step with your inside foot toward the opposite direction that you intend to go as you lower your center of gravity, then push off of that lead foot as you whip your head and body around the other way to quickly change direction. To maintain balance, be sure to snap your head around first and use the technique of spotting to focus your eyes immediately toward the direction you wish to travel. Think of a spin move as just a change of direction cut, only instead of planting with your outside foot and cutting, you plant with your inside foot across your body and spin around to head the other way. And finally, we have the stutter step move. A stutter step move is when you're running in a certain direction, then you stop and fake like you're going to bust a move in another direction, then you explode into a full speed sprint in the original direction of travel. The fake is executed in the brief hesitation of the stutter step. As your opponent reacts to the direction he thinks you're going to change into, he leans his body away from defending the original direction of travel, leaving it open. Run with full strides, then stutter step with quick, choppy feet, like you're going to change direction, then burst into more full-length strides. Stutter steps require good starting and stopping skills. Well, that's really what it is. A start, then a stop, then a start again. Incorporate these moves into your offensive arsenal and you will have profound success. The best moves are spontaneous and not predicted. You don't even know what's going to happen until it's done. You react like a shadow. Your opponent dictates your decisions and technique. In a sense, your opponent decides how you are going to fake them out. As you slash through the defense, watch for the way your opponent is leaning their center of gravity and go away from that direction. Use psychology in your head and body fakes to juke your opponent. You adapt and adjust to your opponent like water adapting to the shape of its container. Think of yourself as water flowing down a river. You want to take the path of least resistance and obstacles. You want to go with the flow and take the path that the defense gives you. That's really what the art of faking is all about. Now let's put the routine together. We recommend the science of speed be used in conjunction with the science of jumping plyometrics routine. The explosive power attained through the science of jumping program will make a big difference in your sprinting power, change of direction ability, starting speed, and stopping power. To avoid overtraining, reduce the amount of sets you perform in your science of jumping plyometrics routine by 1 set per exercise. That should allow for full blast speed training without the risk of overtraining. The science of speed follows the same rest and recovery schedule as the science of jumping program, so do the science of speed once every 4 to 7 days. For optimal results, do the science of speed immediately after you do the science of stretch warm-up routine, then follow the science of speed program immediately with your science of jumping plyometrics routine, then strength train your legs after that with weights, and finish off your workout with the science of stretching lower body stretch routine. A helpful hint: to avoid blisters, wear 2 pairs of socks, a thin, crisp pair underneath a thicker pair. That way the friction is between the socks and not against the skin of your foot. Now let's take a look at the exercises that make up the science of speed routine. We start off with form stepping. You should use this exercise to develop strong, powerful hip flexor and iliopsoas muscles and a long front foot reach. Front knee lift and front foot extension are essential for maximizing stride length. This exercise is great for developing the technique necessary for maximum stride length. Move your arms straight forward and straight back. Lift your knees high and lean slightly forward. Use knife edge hands and drive with your elbows. Emphasize lifting your knee up higher than your waist. Get your knees way up and kick out strong. After a few months of practice, you can try the advanced version of form stepping that Julian is demonstrating here. Do 2 sets of 20 yards. Next, we have a basic footwork drill. The human body is narrower sideways than it is facing straight ahead. This enables you to get through narrow openings by changing your body angle to get sideways to slice through the defense. The following exercise is great for developing slicing moves. It's called the triangle footwork drill. With tape, mark off 3 corners of a triangle. Your feet are 1.5 shoulder widths apart. Jab step with one foot out and back, then jab step with the other foot out and back, repeating this in rapid succession. Go for maximum speed while still touching the required targets. You need both speed and accuracy. What you're doing is you're practicing changing your body angle and changing from a left front stance to a right front stance as quickly as possible. Combining this movement along with step drags will give you incredible slicing moves and in-tight quickness. Do 2 sets for 20 seconds each at maximum speed and intensity. We move on to step drags. Do a step drag forward, then a step drag back, then a step drag to one side, then a step drag to the other side. That will count as 1 repetition. Do 2 sets of 5 repetitions. Try to reach out far with your lead foot and cover some distance on each step drag. The step drag is an essential part of your quickness and footwork skills. It allows you to maintain balance in your stance while advancing in any direction. This really helps you to always be in the right position. Again, do 2 sets of 5 repetitions each way. Next, we have foot fire. With foot fire, you're after maximum speed. Now we start getting into some overspeed type of training. By staying stationary and not covering any distance with your feet, you're able to maximize your foot speed and minimize your foot contact time. Listen to the rhythm of your feet. Try to reduce the amount of time it takes between the beats of your footsteps. Foot fire should be done in bursts of 20-second sets because studies have shown that after 15 to 20 seconds you tend to reduce speed, which would be detrimental to our goal. Remember, in the science of speed drills, you want to go at your absolute maximum speed. We do 2 sets of 20 seconds each. We suggest you play your favorite music during your Science of Speed routine. It not only helps with motivation and exertion, but it helps you get a rhythm in your movements. Remember, smoothness is speed. Next, we do seated arm swings. Make a knife edge with your hands like you're trying to slice through the air. You must move your arms as fast as possible without eliminating any range of motion. Don't sacrifice range of motion and form for additional speed. When moving fast, there is a strong tendency to cut the range of motion short. You need to concentrate on avoiding this. Front hand needs to come up to head height and rear hand needs to travel behind your hips on every repetition. Really throw your rear elbow up high and hard. Don't worry about remaining in your original spot. You should end up bouncing around. When you're running, your arm swings counterbalance your leg thrusts. Think of your hands as slicing through the air with maximum force and power. Seated arm swings are a form of overspeed training because by eliminating your legs from the movement, you allow your arms to pump a bit faster than they can when you are sprinting, and therefore, this drill conditions your arm swings to go faster than their maximum speed. Do 2 sets at maximum speed for 20 seconds each. Next up is the shake and bake. Stay loose and relaxed. Jiggle yourself and go for maximum gyration. Feel your whole body wiggle. You should jiggle like jello from your head to your toes. Shake your hips and shoulders and let your arms dangle loose at your sides. Keep your jaw loose and let your mouth jiggle. Go for about 10 yards, then burst into a full speed sprint for another 20 yards. This exercise trains your body to stay loose, then explode. Anytime you're tense, you have to begin your movement by relaxing first, then moving. This really tips off your opponent of your intentions and ruins your attempt at faking them out. A move requires that you be loose and agile. Also, staying loose creates smooth movements, which are more efficient and therefore adds to your speed. The shake and bake is the ultimate drill to condition your body to remain loose in your movements. Do 4 sets of 10-yard shake and bakes that turn into 20-yard sprints. Next, we have the baseline shadow drill. The offensive athlete's goal is to get away from the defender, moving up and down the baseline while making as many moves as possible and changing direction often to try to make distance from the defender. The defender's job is to stay directly in front of their opponent at all times. On defense, use your step drags until your opponent turns and runs, then run with them. Stop when they stop, and use step drags to shuffle from left to right. You work step drags, cutting, faking, starting, and stopping, all in a live action scenario. Try to be competitive on both offense and defense. If you don't have a training partner, skip this drill. Do 2 sets of 20 seconds each for both offense and defense, so each person does 2 sets on offense and each person does 2 sets on defense. Next, we have high knee karaoke. This is great for footwork, fast feet, and for developing the hip flexor muscles for the front knee lift that is so vital in sprinting. Go for maximum knee lift. Really get those knees high. You can't get your knees too high on this drill. Also, move your feet as fast as possible, like you're barefoot on red-hot lava. Have your feet spring off the ground as fast as you can. Listen to the rhythm of your feet tapping the ground and try to reduce the amount of time it takes between beats. For a bigger challenge at a more advanced level, try doing change of direction high knee karaoke, as shown here. Do 2 sets of 20 yards each. Next, we have zigzag runs. This is where we work cutting and change of direction. You have to have cleats on in order to do zigzag runs on a grass surface, or else you'll slip out. If you're not wearing cleats, do zigzag runs on the cement or on a basketball court. Remember to slow down with quick, hard, choppy steps. Drop your center of gravity as you lean into the turn, and plant on the inside blade of your outside foot on all of your change of direction cuts. Beginners should line up the cones in a straight line around 10 feet apart, like this. For an added challenge after a couple months of practice, you can stagger the cones apart like this to require tighter, more hairpin type of cuts at a sharper angle. If you don't have cones, you can use t-shirts or other objects to imitate the cones. The tall cones shown here teach you to dodge around something as tall as a human, which is beneficial but not required. You should use 4 cones on your zigzag runs. Do 2 sets each direction for a total of 4 sets. Next, we have the bread and butter of the Science of Speed program, overspeed runs. If you don't have access to an overspeed training device, try running on a slight downhill grade, no more than 15 or 20 degrees. Or you can simply replace these with 40-yard sprints, although that won't be quite as effective. Overspeed runs have to be done at 100% intensity, as fast as you can possibly go. Actually, because of the overspeed assistance, you are going faster than you can possibly go. This is the best way to make your nervous system generate faster impulses. To help you with going at hyperspeed, try to think of something scary as you sprint full speed. Of all your emotions, fear builds up the most adrenaline. Pretend that you are being chased and you're running for your life. Go full speed every time. You really need to stress quality over quantity with overspeed runs. Do 5 repetitions of overspeed runs at the beginner level and work up to 8 repetitions of overspeed runs after a couple months. That's right, you only need a few reps of these super speed, high intensity runs. You will discover that 5 of these overspeed runs are more taxing and exerting than 20 regular sprints. And finally, we have bar twist plyos. The completion of this exercise should lead you right into your plyometrics routine. This is the plyometrics exercise that works the load and explode action in the torso area for that critical explosiveness in the juncture area of torque between your opposing arm and leg thrust vectors. A metal weightlifting bar works best because its weight adds a good amount of resistance, but a broomstick or any pole will work too. Go as hard and as fast as you can. A twist left, then a twist right counts as 1 repetition. Do 2 sets of 8 repetitions. You can copy down the Science of Speed routine shown here by pausing your VCR. In the Science of Speed exercises, quality is stressed over quantity. Strive for perfect form and 100% full speed on your movements. Between sets, give yourself just enough time to catch your breath and be able to go 100% on the next set. About 1 minute of rest between sets should do. You should start to see speed and quickness improvements in just a few weeks. Now you have the ability to maximize your stride length and stride frequency. You now have the ability to make hairpin turns and stop on a dime. Master the Science of Speed and you will become unstoppable.
Special thanks to Dr. Robert Fay. Music provided by Alyssa Allred Thompson.